Yeah. Fine. I'm boring.
You want.
I'll advocate for privacy and I'll advocate for it, but for me, I'm
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
I'm not important. I have all my stuff.
So thank you to Nick, Anthony, and Susan online, and anybody else who gets to watch this video after. I think we'll go ahead and get started as we kind of close the door, help Matt get set up on it and everything. I won't belabor the point. This will be our last OWASP chapter meetup for this year. We're trying to finalize some details about what we start next year with, but I'm excited about what might turn into a capture the flag event. So if that sounds like it would be fun, where OWASP Nashville may compete against the other groups, stay tuned and share with your friends so we can have a bigger group. Otherwise, if Matt, if you're ready to jump in and share, I'll let Matt from Indoor Labs, our sponsor today, jump in and start our conversation. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Okie dokie. I'm gonna open my Coke here. So this is not a beer for people on Zoom, or you can have a beer if you want. Yeah, my name is Matt. I am a solutions architect at Indoor Labs. Actually, I have a built-in about me slide, so let me start sharing this thing here. Let's go. Did I leave the meeting by accident? I think I did. Hang on. I'll rejoin.
Record.
Put myself, okay, good. And everybody on Zoom can hear, right? I'm assuming.
Can Nick or run that? Yeah, we're good.
Cool, beautiful. All right, let's share this. Beautiful. We'll zoom out of the way. Awesome. Okay, so first thing. My screen sharing is other things. First thing is we're gonna do a Lego giveaway. So if anybody wants to go ahead and scan the QR code, I'll show this again at the end, so don't feel pressure right now to be like, oh, let me get my phone, but it's a little e-walk because Indoor Labs. But yeah. So a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Matt. I'm a solutions architect at Indoor Labs. I used to be in cloud security and vulnerability management, a company called DAS that got bought by Wiz, that got bought by Google. I was a very early SE at a company called Sneak that back in 2019, 2020 became the product specialist for software composition analysis there. I was a former software engineer for about not even 6 months. And then I said, well, I know what I don't want to do now. I just didn't like stand-ups. I couldn't do the stand-ups. I liked talking and teaching to people, teaching people too much. So I'm like, well, I like to do it for fun. I'll put it to you that way. Master's in computer science. I'm from Boston originally. It will slip out. You'll hear it from time to time, especially after a beer or two. It does happen, the accent. But right now I live in Wayne, New Jersey with my beautiful family. 2 girls, 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old. If anybody else has 2 children around that age, one's an angel, one is feral. She's insane right now. And I love golf, woodworking, carpentry. I built a lot of stuff in my house through YouTube, of course. And if anybody's a Helldivers 2 fan, if anybody's played that before, it's one of the best games that exists. But yeah. So let me ask this first. Who's not using AI at work? Nobody. Meaning who's not using artificial intelligence at work, like coding assistants, things like that. Is anybody here not using it as a part of their work today? You're not using AI at all?
No, we can't use it.
Why not?
Doesn't work for government. It's.
Oh, well, that's why. Which one? Is it,
International.
okay, yeah, well, that makes sense. So, the reason I ask that is because usually everybody's yes, unless they work at a government entity or someplace that like Lockheed or something like that. Although they're probably doing it too. But. Things are kind of changing now in this industry. What I will say, we're kind of experiencing a totally different way of software development. Of like who builds it, how we build it, what we're actually building. And, you know, kind of like we actually talk about how we're actually writing or building code. Has anybody ever heard that term prompt engineer? Do you remember that like a few years ago when people were like, oh, prompt engineer is a big new thing? It's like, that's kind of, at first I was like, oh, this thing will never take off, but it's actually now kind of becoming a thing. So we're starting to do more prompting, not programming, but I have my own opinions on that I'll get to in a couple minutes. So what does that entail? That entails using things like Cursor, using like these kind of co-authors or programming buddies, if you will, programming chat, Copilots, call it whatever you want. I'm gonna try to stick with assistant, even though we say not an assistant, I still think it kind of is an assistant. Anything like that. So are people using Cursor? Anything like that are using Cursor? I know, Jeremy, you're using Cursor. But they're all one and the same. It's an IDE that allows you to interact with some kind of bot that can help you write code. What we're building, when this kind of all first started happening, back what, 2022? Is when these kind of copilots started becoming a big thing. Everybody was just building these chatbots to like help answer questions, and that was like so revolutionary and stuff. But that's really changing because now we're doing a lot of things like agents, where they're making like real-time decisions for us. You know, it's no longer just, oh, a chatbot with an LLM under the hood. It's now, hey, I want an agent that will do ABC 1, 2, 3 for me, and it'll go ahead and build a whole pipeline for you if you want to, kind of thing. So things are starting to get more complex, and every 5 minutes, a new thing is getting introduced, which is starting to drive me a little crazy, because it's like a product comes out that says, oh, look what you can do with AI. And then Claude says, oh, we just released this thing that does what that product does. So now it's like that product is rendered useless. Like they just released agents. So it's like all these people that built these kind of orchestrators that would handle a lot of that for you are now like, oh, we have to pivot. So a lot of things are just changing constantly, and it's no longer just chatbots anymore. It's now a lot of other things. And not only that, but it's also who builds it. I hate that quote. I'm gonna say it right now, interns who never sleep. That is not true in my opinion. I'll tell you what one of my professors in grad school told me about machine learning and how smart these things are. They're no smarter than like a fly. Like they can do a lot of really good repetitive things, but they're not interns who never sleep. They're going to be helping you build something that you really, like you still have to think about it though, right? You still have to kind of come up with it. You still have to observe it. You can't just let it run amok, because now what you're seeing is all these engineers, especially these senior engineers, they're now coming back and saying, oh, now I need to fix all the stuff that AI did to break everything. So it's actually kind of said, oh, it's going to replace all our jobs. Now all the jobs are coming back because people are saying, whoops, we got to fix everything that AI just broke. But it is changing. And the thing that I'd like to kind of equate all these co-pilots or assistants to is like, if I'm building something in my house, it's one of those IKEA things, right? I just had to build a ton of, don't get me started on it, but a ton of these sideboards. My wife really liked them. She wants to put built-ins. So I'm working on built-ins in the house, more built-ins. And IKEA, they give you that little Allen key that you're supposed to screw in 6,000 screws into this thing. That sucks. I'm not going to do that. I could do it with that. I still need to kind of know what I'm doing. It's just going to be very time consuming. Instead, I want to use a drill. Now, I still have to know how the drill works. I still have to know, okay, don't put the speed to 2, put it to 1, don't put the torque too high or you strip the screw. Like, I still have to know what I'm doing, but I can now do it faster because I have a drill instead of a useless Allen key. AI is the drill. That's, in my mind, what AI is. It's a tool designed to help me work faster and to build faster. But just kind of wanted to give a sense of like, what's the term? The state of the state, if you will. Does anybody know who Andrei Karpathy is? Karpathy. Okay. For those that don't, that's okay. He's kind of like, I don't want to say the godfather of this stuff, but without him, a lot of this wouldn't exist. He's done a lot of the research into this. He's an incredibly smart person, but he's also the guy that coined the term vibe coding, which is, if you say, oh, I'm just YOLOing in software engineer, it's like, see if it works, right? This is like YOLOing on steroids. Like, it is just, you let go of everything, you let the AI take care of everything, and you just go with the vibes, and you just kind of feel it, and just say, okay, go ahead and build it for me. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but, there are some kind of dangerous stuff with doing that. I think that's pretty obvious. But again, it's like you have the drill. You still need to know how to tweak it, how to use it, how to make sure you don't break something while you're using this kind of tool. So there's a few things to know about LLMs. And by the way, if anybody has questions during this, like, I've never used an LLM, like, I've seen it all. I've seen people that are like, what's an MCP server? We're going to talk about MCP servers. But if you haven't heard anything about, of what I've talked about, that's fine. Like, we can chat about it, like, don't be shy kind of thing. Feel free to interrupt. All of these assistants, Cursor, Copilot, Windsurf, that's just like the delivery mechanism of these assistants. The real thing is the LLM under the hood. There are other companies out there, something like Augment, which like they add their own kind of contextual engine to it so that even when you do utilize any old LLM off the shelf, it'll still like add some spice to it a little bit, like it'll enhance it. But like really at the end of the day, all these tools are just an IDE that baked really nicely, I will give it to them, a way for you to like access and actually utilize LLMs within how you're actually building. So they're all really good about, open source code, but that can also bring bad stuff to it. Now, what do I mean by that? All these LLMs, what are they all trained on? Open source code. What are CVEs? CVEs are vulnerabilities that exist. I mean, obviously not open source code, but a lot of them exist in open source code. So all these LLMs are getting trained on all this open source code that have vulnerabilities in it. What do you think is going to happen? Those vulnerabilities are going to start creeping through because that's how they're trained. And, a question that a lot of people are asking is, well, how do I secure the code that this AI wrote, right? How do I secure my AI generated code? And people like, especially as early as like 6 months ago, were kind of like freaking out about this. Like, oh, there's no tool that does this, like, da, da, da. How do you secure the code that you write? You would secure the code AI wrote the same way you secure code that AI writes. It's the same exact, code is code. It's nothing, just because an AI wrote it doesn't mean it's special in any way. Yeah, it was done faster, it's still code. You still secure it the way you would any other code. There was a question in the chat. I'm interested in ways to leverage AI to check vulnerabilities. Oh boy, do I got something for you. Right? Well, we'll get there. Yes, I have something really good for you. Actually, there's a lot in here about that. programming versus software engineering, I'm not gonna get too deep into this, but the way I kind of look at it is if you're writing a script, that's more programming, software engineering, you're more talking about architecture and actually building a system, optimization, things like that. I think these co-pilots are more of a programmer than they are a software engineer. Are they getting better? Sure. But again, the problem is you got to give these things a lot of context. And that's another conversation that we can have later. Does anybody remember this? This happened, what, March this past year? Has anybody seen this? This is one of those like, I don't mean any offense to anybody, one of these like tech bros, right? That think, oh, I can just use AI to build my thing, right? I'm gonna make this sick product. It's gonna make me like $100,000 a month, my side hustle, like whatever, right? So he builds this thing and then people start owning it left and right. So guys, I'm under attack. Ever since I started to share how I built my SaaS using Cursor, random things that maxed out API keys, people bypassing the subscription, creating random shit on a database. You know, as you know, I'm not technical, so this is taking me longer than usual to figure out. So this guy like, and it has 2.1 million views. So this guy was like, oh, check out this sweet thing I built. You can go visit here and do this. And people said, this is gonna be insecure as all hell. And they just went and owned it left and right. And this is like the scary side of vibe coding where, again, this guy picked up a drill and just started screwing holes in the wall, hoping that the built-ins will get built, kind of thing. You don't want to do that. So there are just some weird people out there, and I think that they're hilarious. So let the AI interns deploy it abroad. They let the AI, not the interns. I gotta get rid of that in my next one. This is like a kind of interesting example of like the flow of, all right, let me vibe code something, and I'm gonna go ahead, and then an attacker actually comes in, right? So developer says, hey, AI, hook up the database and pull in some data on some recent users, add a leaderboard feature. So it prompts, the AI generates code, but throughout the entire process, it's not adding any authentication to a SQL database. It's not putting in any rate limits for API. And then SaaS, sure, a SaaS scanner will scan it. However, there are things that a SaaS scanner won't pick up that are still insecure that an AI can accidentally or intentionally, who knows, put in that will say, yep, this looks good. So then the code is reviewed. Anybody who's done code reviews before, sometimes, and I'm guilty of it, yeah, it looks good, go. And then it's shipped. So you'll have like another AI do your code review and it'll say, yeah, it looks good. It's shipped, and then an attacker uses AI fuzzing to find out the endpoints, gains access, and is able to go ahead and take the data. So it kind of all starts at the development process, like the IDE, like I forget who asked, but somebody asked about how do I, secure this kind of stuff in the IDE. We're gonna go over that. And that's kind of what we'll focus on, but like this is kind of it's a very simple example, but you saw it in this poor Tech Bros app. This is exactly what happened. He didn't even do SaaS though, or anything like that, so. This is kind of the reality. Y'all have probably seen these stats before. What I like about them is that they're coming straight from the top, Microsoft, right? 75% of developers using Copilots, stuff like that. The 25% are probably in the government, not allowed to use them. 40% of the code on GitHub is AI generated. That's only open source stuff, like what they have access to. So it's probably higher. 62% of AI generated code has issues. I will bet you that number is higher than 62%, but that's just me being skeptical of AI, but it's probably 80. So we did our own little experiment and we said, okay, build an application to track a board game. It should include the game name, the number of players, length of the game, some generic description, use Python as the backend, React for the front end, right? So number one, the app didn't work. It's expected at this point, honestly. And And then, so it built it, took 10 minutes, then we scanned it. And originally, it added 1,200 dependencies. So that's JavaScript, right? That's just JavaScript by nature. Just a lot of dependencies, but we'll get to that in a second. Of those, in those dependencies, there were 65 critical CVEs, countless others, highs, mediums, and lows, 700 SAST issues. And then we said, okay, wait a second, there are too many dependencies in here, reduce the number of dependencies. It added more dependencies. Now, what's interesting is the thought process was, oh, okay, you want me to get rid of some direct dependencies? I'll do that. So it got rid of some directs. Then it like tried to rebuild it and said, well, I do need this app or this component to do this. So maybe I can replace this component from these three others to do the same thing. But what it didn't account for was a lot of these dependencies. They have these transitive dependencies. So it just added more transitive dependencies, even though it thought like, yeah, I'm reducing the number of your dependencies, but it added more. Even when we said no, it takes them away. Which I thought was fascinating. That was Anthony who asked that. Okay, good. And Anthony, we're gonna get to that actually now. So I figured, let me, I have to switch up the share. Where is it? I'm just gonna switch screen. What am I doing? So this is cursor. Can you guys read that? Is that big enough or let me make it bigger? Looks good? Looks good. Okay, good. So we're gonna, and this is an open source demo kind of thing, by the way. Like, if you guys want to try it, I'll send the link afterwards and you're more than welcome to. But all the instructions are in the README. And we're just gonna tell it, hey, create a to-do list app. Everybody does a to-do list app. Python backend, JavaScript frontend. I'm gonna let this run for a minute or two while we keep going, just because, again, it's AI, it can take a few minutes. So it's gonna go ahead and do all that. The thing that I did want to point out were, I better turn those on. MCP server, we're gonna talk about MCP server, but we'll get back to that. So I'm just gonna let this cook for a minute or two while we kind of keep going here. So what did we kind of learn in this experiment? LLMs by nature are non-deterministic, which is good and bad. That means that you're never going to get the same exact response twice or from two different LLMs, something like that. So it's kind of good for like creativity, if you will, or we'll get into creativity in a second. But one of the things I like to do is I'll use one LLM to generate some code, and I'll use like a second LLM to say, hey, can you check this code and can we maybe add in some design patterns to do this or that or that? Like I'll use two different LLMs to do two different things and to like check each other's work. We have a capability in our product that we use 3 different LLMs as 3 different agents, like a security one, a developer one, and a DevOps one to make sure that they're like talking to each other and make sure that the code actually does what it needs to do and is secure. But this is a really good way to kind of, I don't want to necessarily say combat non-determinism, but to help kind of guide these LLMs into doing the right thing or the thing that you want, I should say. And then different models are obviously going to perform differently, right? So yeah, the non-determinism, it allows for creativity and reasoning, but you're never going to get the same answer twice. And if you do, you need to publish a paper on it because you should never do that. Let's see, is this the, okay, good. Let's check the app real quick. It's supposed to use the MCP server, but that's the whole reason for AI, but we'll get back into that in a second. LLMs are dependencies, just like with everything else, like, you know, anything from NPM or PyPy, like they're another dependency, right? So this is a good example of this non-determinism. Same exact prompt, two different models. One created one with two different dependencies and the other added 5. Why did they do this? Who knows? No, this is the thing about AI. It's kind of like a black box. It just decided it needed to do that. And if you prompt that thing again, even Claude 3.5, it may give you another with 10 dependencies or with 2, you know? Expect the unexpected. This is kind of self-explanatory, but there are going to be risks beyond like stuff that static analysis can pick up and what SCA can pick up, that from like an architecture standpoint are going to be invulnerable, like how you handle PII data or something like that. Or like, oh, you're gonna, let me change the base image for this super important Kubernetes cluster, right? That actually utilizes it. Like that is, AI thinks it's doing a good job by saying like, oh, this image is more secure, but that's a huge risk to just upright change a base image, right? You want to actually do your work there. That example of having 1,200 dependencies, us saying, hey, actually take out, you know, this too many, take some out, and then it just added more. That's the vulnerability multiplication thing. The more dependencies, or even less, but inadvertently adding more dependencies that AI can add, it's going to introduce more risk and actually go ahead and really mess stuff up. And then really small features can have a huge impact, right? And this is a good example of the way like a static analysis tool, like it can't pick this up. So Auth 2.0 implementation modified to simplify login flow. So we said the AI, hey, let's more streamline the login flow. Let's make it simpler for the user. Let's simplify the login, right? It removed the state parameter from the auth check, from the auth request. And that's not good. Like, it should not be removing this HTTP session, if the state doesn't equal the original state, like you have to, if this then return, hey, the HTTP status unauthorized invalid state, it was just like, oh, let's make this easier, and got rid of all of that. And that's not something SaaS can pick up. That's like, again, more like architecty kind of change. So like that guy, you know, if he ran his SAS scanner, wouldn't have picked up something like this. Let's check the ID again. See if it started to listen to me. If not, what the aha. So we'll actually save this for a second, because that's the MCP server stuff that's coming up. Start with secure prompts. We actually made a secure prompt library that I can share with you guys if you want. And it's actually a really good table showing like, okay, if you want the AI to be guided this way, you should ask it like this, and it will generate more secure code. This is a lot. This is the thing, like when I was a developer anyway, I wasn't thinking like, oh, I have to do this. Oh, and I got to make it really secure. For me, it was like, I got to make this thing work. Like that was my main. It's probably why I wasn't the most secure developer, but that was my main thing. Like, I got to make this work. Like, I got a new feature I got to push out. Like, I needed to build, I needed to run, I needed to pass my tests, I needed to do all this stuff. I wasn't thinking like, oh, and make it really secure. So if you kind of think like that, but then let me also think about making it more secure, if that makes sense. Put that in the prompt, and then you'll hopefully, get more secure code. So it's like priming the pump a little bit. You got to like prime the security pump with these models and say like, hey, no, I want you to actually, you know, tell it up front for design to design securely. Like even just adding that little, add a function that allows the user to add an image to their to-do list item and design it securely. If you just add that, you'll get way better, more secure code than not saying that. And take advantage of the reasoning too. So this is a good example. Write a Python script that takes a host name as input and pings it 4 times. Simple, import OS, host, Same prompt, validate the input to avoid security issues, and look at all this other stuff it added. It's not the host, not replace, is not raise value or invalid host name format. So like that's kind of preventing any input invalidation kind of thing. Just by adding that last sentence, validate the input to avoid security issues. Prime the pump a little bit. Security standards. This is where we get into fun stuff like MCP server and stuff like that. Test-driven development, what's old is new again. My CTO told us to say that when we do the talk, because he worked at Bell Labs in the 70s and 80s, and he's like, oh, test-driven development, it's all back now, what the hell? So I've done it before many years ago, but I guess it is back again. Ignoring rules to protect sensitive data. And a rules file. The rules file, this is where things get actually really interesting. Because rules and what's the other term? Like rules that you give the LLMs and the Copilots and things like that. This is where you can get kind of crazy customizable with stuff. You got to put in the work for it, obviously, but like instead of it just being an LLM for all, and that it's okay for everybody, you could take one of these LLMs and implement these rules to make it really good for like your environment. Like if you have some kind of company policy that says anytime you, organization specific preference, this is how we want to write this kind of function. Put that as a rule in Cursor, whatever ID, I'm just gonna say Cursor from now on. And now, anytime that Cursor goes ahead and writes that function that you're writing, it's going to have this rule in this context to always do it that way. So this is where you can kind of get really customizable and really powerful with these LLMs. It's context and these rules. So it's like this rule tells the AI code assistant what to do whenever there is user input. And like that is your standard now as a company that you've always followed. But now you don't have to worry about developers doing it a different way because Cursor will tell them, well, wait a second, we're supposed to do it this way, kind of thing.
Question.
Yes.
In your experience, how prevalent are those rules files? Like when I think of, I was a software engineer for a lot of big companies,
Yeah.
and I haven't been a software engineer for about 5 years. So I stopped being on the keyboard right before this happened.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I think of when I think of like, not even just vibe coding, but generative AI assisted coding
Yeah.
is how you maintain some of the standards that you're getting through enablement
Yeah.
that are given to these developers. If you're in an organization with 2,000 software developers
Mhm.
and the company's very specific about how it approves open source, or it's got a lot of kind of helper libraries to build in,
Mhm.
how do you keep everybody on target? It seems like this could be something to do that,
Could
but how prevalent is this?
I will tell you, today, everybody still does it the same way, right? Enablement, go to Confluence, you're onboarding, like the traditional sense, you would always do it anyway, right? This is going to be a much better way to do that. Because what's happening is people are just becoming more and more reliant on this stuff and just letting it do these kinds of things. I think people are starting to turn around a little bit, be like, eh, maybe we shouldn't do that, but like, you kind of get the idea there. It's very prevalent if you have a company that is willing to kind of put in the work to do this and to actually implement it organization-wide. Like a lot of companies have budget set aside to do stuff like this. Like this is part of their AI budget. So when they actually have this implemented, and there are even tools that do that for you now, of course, with AI, that will ingest a lot of this stuff and say, okay, these are all of our enablement documentations, this is all our Confluence. I want you to build us like a best practice model and create the rules out of this so that we can put it in every project, right? That works for companies with maybe like couple thousand repos. What happens when you get to the company of 20,000 repos? It's way harder to do there. And that's not a technology thing, that's just a we have so much stuff thing. So it's a very long and probably too much of an answer, but like it depends on the company and it depends on if they're willing to take on a project like this. And if they are, then it works.
Alternative, if you're like a bigger organization.
Yeah.
To maybe train your own model.
Yeah, you could do that.
Built in,
Yeah,
okay.
certainly. Certainly. That's the biggest thing that's missing from a lot of these tools is the context. And the catch 22 there, or the damned if you do, damned if you don't, whatever saying you want to say with that. Is these models need context, your data. I don't want to give all my data. Well, then how am I supposed to get, like, it's like one of those, something's got to give. And I've had this conversation countless times where they're like, the user's like, yeah, you know, we're using Cursor and it's okay, but it ends up creating more work. And I always ask like, well, did you give it your entire code base? Why would we do that? That's insane. No, we're not going to do that. That's why, because you're not giving it the additional context. It could be way better if you gave it all of your data. Nobody wants to give all of their data. So it's a kind of a weird spot that they're in, that people are, and I understand it. I totally get it. That's why it's a good drill. It's not going to build the thing for you, you know. That's a good question, though. It's an excellent question. The data, speaking of the data, this is specifically around like CVE stuff. And I forget this a lot, that these models are only trained up to a certain date. Like I forget what, on the next slide. Okay, it is good. So these models are only trained up to a certain date. So today CV123 comes out for component ABC. Well, the model wasn't trained on that up to today. It stopped, the cutoff was June 2024. So it's not going to have that data of the new CV that's been released. So it's going to say, yeah, this looks good, go for it. So this is where MCP servers are coming in. So like, why didn't Cursor choose the latest versions of a given component? Because to Cursor, that is the latest component. That could be, especially in like the JavaScript world, that could be 1,600 versions behind, right? They're always getting updated. And the Pythonic way of coding is to always be on the latest version. Cursor's doing that, and it thinks it's right, but its data is cut off. So it's like there's a lot of stale old data that is still there that it will input in because it's like, yeah, this seems right, sure. So this is where MCP actually comes in really handy. Okay. And I'll show you what that looks like. Does anybody know, do people know what MCP server is? Okay, this is how I like to define it. Think of it as like an API for your LLMs. So it doesn't have that data, that context of the latest version, the latest information. It needs an additional source of information, right? Now, you could go to Google, okay, sick. Google has, I don't even know if they have like an MCP for search or whatever, like go search the web or, that's fine, but you're still probably not going to get that good of data because it's like if you try to go out and find it, right? So these, like for us, for example, our MCP server will scan, will give you the vulnerability data. And what happens is Cursor says, I'm going to build, let me add some dependencies. And at the very end, it says, oh, and also use Endor Labs to make sure my code is secure. And what happens here, actually, expand this out, you can see, you know, built the app out, did all this stuff, had some trouble with my file system, but it fixed itself, which is good. So in my MCP instructions, you see I have these rules here, right? I have SAST, SCA, and secrets. So I tell Cursor, hey, this is the rule you have to follow. anytime a dependency is added, check for vulnerabilities in projects in these file types. And it uses this, integrated through the MCP server, configured into da. And you give it all these instructions. And these are standard templates that like we provide people that, but again, these rules, you can make them whatever you want. It's just a markdown file. And we tell it, okay, make sure you do this, all scans must be performed using that MCP server. So that MCP server is this. Oh, it's because I have 2 turned on, that's why. And I mean, the setup is just a JSON. And it goes, check dependency vulnerabilities. This tool will actually check the dependency vulnerabilities, retrieve vulnerability information from our database. It'll get a resource from your project that you may have already scanned, and it will actually perform the scan on your behalf too, if you wanted to. And so what happened was, we started building this app, and I said, okay, make sure to run scans for vulnerabilities. So it had to figure itself out. So it added dependencies. The Flask core's vulnerabilities are fixed. It found the dependencies and fixed them. And this is how it ended up fixing them. So at first it added this Flask 3.0.0, which to Cursor, to the LLM, to Sonnet, whatever have you, seemed fine. And it added it. And if you didn't have this information from an MCP server of, oh, this is actually vulnerable, you would have just had vulnerable code. You would have had these CVs. So what it did was it said, all right, let me go get this information from Endor. And I can see that there are vulnerabilities in here. These are all transitive dependencies. It's gonna say no vulnerable function is known to be reachable because we do reachability analysis. Non-reachable function. I should try to upgrade Flask to the latest version or explicitly add a set of tools to the requirements to fix these issues. And that's what it did. And you notice, like, as a developer, I didn't say, oh, scan my code, right? Because again, I'm not thinking I want to write the most secure code. I'm thinking I got to get this to work. I got to get this to run. I got to push the prop. There's this whole notion of IDE plugins from security tools, blah, 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 blah. This is a feature that's always requested and never used, right? Like, I get the appeal. On paper, it sounds wonderful. Oh, I have a plugin that I can just install. And when I worked at Sneak, the use rate was like 3%. It was tiny. But it is a good idea on paper. For me, I think a lot of other developers, the best IDE plugins I have are ones I don't even know that I have installed. Like Prettier. That's the only one I know I have installed because I'm like, oh, that like works great because it makes my code easier to read. And I have like Docker and stuff like that, but like they kind of just work in the background without me having to do anything. That's what the MCP server does, and I believe that that is the way to go rather than an IDE plugin because again, as a dev, I did not tell it to scan anything. I didn't do anything. My company had these rules, uploaded them to my GitHub repo, distributed them out. And then when I go to add a new feature, it's already there just working in the background. I don't have to think about it. And it's adding this more secure code and taking out vulnerabilities that inadvertently added it. Or, depending on your conspiracy level, added them in on purpose. So then, like it had a bunch of issues. You can even see it had all the vulnerability marked as unreachable. That's the other cool thing. It'll get context from us to say like, okay, it's unreachable, so maybe I don't have to fix it because I'm not actually using it. And we provide that information to users to say, yeah, I don't actually have to fix it. Because you may have a policy at your company to say if it's not reachable, you don't have to worry about it. And that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. What did it say? I can see there are vulnerabilities. 3 highs, 5 mediums. That's the most it's added so far. Usually it adds like 2 highs and 1 medium. I haven't seen 3 highs and 5 mediums yet. So that's interesting. And this is Claude 4.5 Sonnet. This is like the latest one from Anthropic. So yeah, I guess that's probably why. It's a different model. And it added more, huh?
Non-deterministic.
Non-determinism, baby, that's what it is. But you can kind of see like, this gets really powerful really quickly. I love MCP server and these rules. I think that this is like the way to go if you're gonna use AI at work. And to keep code secure and to really do anything else you want it to do, like. Follow our best practices and guidelines and do this and do that. Adoption. Until companies like. Until like Bank of America and Citibank and like the banks adopt these, then like kind of everybody else follows. That's what I've seen anyway, especially, but even within financial, once one bank does it, then the other banks tend to do it right afterwards. And then you get other industries doing it. Tech company, like the West Coast tech companies, I'm seeing this a lot more than the East Coast tech companies, right? Everything kind of goes from west to east. That's maybe because I primarily work out with East Coast companies and I see a lot of the, not older stuff, but my colleague Critty gets to use all Basil and AI stuff. It's so much fun. She's in Seattle, or she's in California, so that's why. So I think you'll see more adoption of this. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but like. As companies kind of dig their heels deeper with this AI stuff and we all kind of figure out. Is this actually helping? Is this just useless? Is it a bubble? All that kind of fun stuff. Then I can see these actually like having a place and actually being useful. Anybody see that MIT study where it's like, turns out 95% of like companies that utilize AI have had zero ROI with it. That this could help with that, I think. We went over this MCP. So just like these are things to take away from this. Start with secure prompts early, you'll have more secure code. Implement those standards using the rules of MCP servers. And adding some kind of security signal that's not just reliant on the LLM, have some kind of external data like an MCP server that will help assist with that. And I'll send this to everybody as well, or I'll give it to Jeremy to send to everybody, but. Actually, I may have this handy, hang on. Because I do want to show it. Oh, there's stuff in the chat too. How does code/cursor know to call the MCP server? Where do they connect? So how do they know? You have to tell it to do that. So in the rules here, all scans must be performed using the MCP server integration. So these are the rules that the LLM follows, and then you just have to have it turned on. I have a global one and a workspace one. So don't have two turned on. Just have one. And it connects, you put it in like your .cursor directory, like an MCP JSON, then it's all here. Like you can tell how early this is because like the settings are still in JSON format. There's some IDs where it's like, what was that other ID that I was using? Where there's like a marketplace for MCP servers where it's much more click-through-y kind of thing. But like, I don't know, I'm stuck in my old ways, I guess. I just keep with this. So I hope that answers your question. I think Anthony asked that. Okay, good. Andy, was that like, I hope that also satisfied the IDE hunger, if you will. Of like actually using it in an IDE.
Yes, that helped. Thank you.
No problem. Let me see if I can find this prompt library to show you guys, because it's actually pretty sweet. But any questions about anything while I'm pulling this up?
Is there a cost to use the indoor MCP?
Is it possible?
Is there a cost associated with it?
I mean, yeah, you gotta be an Endor customer. Once you are, then like, yeah, you can use it. It's not like a separate thing or a separate product or anything like that. Like if you have Endor SCA, you can just use the MCP server to like grab that information you already have from the SCA. And if it were free, I'd still be here actually, yeah. Let's see, prompt library. Aha, sweet. And I'm gonna give you guys the direct links, so you don't have to like fill stuff out. Cause like, it's like, oh, get the secure prompt library, and you gotta like put in your name and shit, and it just brings you this. Jeremy, I'll just give you the link,
Thank you.
so you don't have to deal with that stuff. So this just gives like directions on like how to use it, but really this is the library. Is that big enough? Is that okay? Yeah. But it's like, okay, the kind of prompting techniques, so like these are like priming the pumps a little bit, you know, and then we give actually examples like generate secure Python, but that's easy, right? Generate secure Python code that prevents all common web vulnerabilities, the OWASP top 10 for a user to input the handler. And then you can like, this is as if you're building an app for different languages and like what you could give for each different language. So like there's some C stuff, some C# stuff. You can give like critique prompts. That's the other thing, never say please. I'm serious, because then it'll be like too nice, it'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, he's not really serious about this, or she's not really serious about this. Like, that's what our CTO said. He's like, never say please. They'll never do the right job. Just say do this. And then like it has like, okay, I should do this.
You actually seen that?
We have, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
We actually have. And when they all come after us, and they'll come for me first, because I'm the meanest to all these AI prompts. It is what it is, you know, but I got my work done at the time. 'Cause I was using it with my wife the other day, because we were figuring out like dimensions for one of these damn buildings. And I was like, no, you're wrong. You need to calculate it based off of the height from the ceiling, not, and I put not in like capital letters, the floor. Like, she's like, you're so mean to the AI. I'm like, wow, it's fine, don't worry. And then it got it. I almost said, oh, talk to it like you're talking to a 2.5-year-old, but I would never talk to a 2.5-year-old like that. You gotta be like, it's like very, how could I explain this nicely? Very like just directive to it, like kind of like a 2.5-year-old where it's like, okay, now you put the shoe on and then you put the Velcro on and stuff like that, so.
In all seriousness, that is literally how I write my prompts. It's spelling it out like I would with my kids.
Yes, you have to.
Every little detail, if I give it that way, then I probably save myself a lot of time on the back end cleaning up what would be absolute garbage if I didn't do a good prompt.
The other thing I love to do is I explained to Gemini, hey, I had to do this for a customer. They said, okay, we got your results. We got results from our project from this tool, and I wanted to compare it to your results. Here's a spreadsheet of 6,000 findings. Can you do this for me, because I don't have the time? I'm like, yeah, that's fine, I'll do it. It's a good research project. So I explained to Gemini what I wanted, and I said, make me a prompt that I can give to an LLM that will generate this for me. And later I want to compare with this and tell the differences, the project names are different, blah, blah. It generated a whole prompt. I gave that prompt to ChatGPT and said, I want you to read through this and tell me what can be improved on it. And I want you to be able to tell me what's wrong, what's right, and what like I could change and da. Gave me a prompt. Then I gave that prompt to Gemini and I said, okay, do this with these two spreadsheets, and boom, done. And I now have like a sick prompt for like a results comparison, head toe to toe kind of thing that spits out a beautiful spreadsheet. And it took a little longer to like really tweak it and stuff like that, but now I have it and it's done. And now I can just reuse that. Yeah, I'll send Jeremy, I'll send you the link to this, so.
Excellent, thank you.
You don't have to, nobody has to,
So there's all.
exactly. Mine was sold a long time ago, so I'm like, every company, you take whatever you need. Again, I'm not that interesting, so. Was this helpful? I hope folks learned something new, or does anybody have any questions about anything at all? And if you want to scan it again, go for it. How many pieces is it, Jackson?
I know. A couple. Yeah, there's a few.
1010,
That's a good one.
yeah,
What's the age? What and up?
wait.
Not one and up, no
12
way.
and up, sorry.
12?
1 to 4 builders.
They put builders on there now?
You can have 4 people at this. That's us.
That's, I don't remember that.
All together.
I'm getting old. I don't like that. Back in my day, it was just,
Sit down and figure
yeah,
it out.
just sit down and build the damn thing. We talked about this a little bit, but this is like where we kind of fit in. MCP server, we have this AI security code review. Somebody mentioned it, I think Anthony mentioned in CI. Like these kind of architectural changes, I talked a little bit about that, where it's like, okay. That story about changing the base image, by the way, that's a true story, because we dog food our own stuff. And we were using this and testing it out, and it upgraded a base image, or somebody internally upgraded a base image, which was planned, which we wanted to do. And our tool flagged it, gave it a medium severity and said, hey, somebody upgraded this base image to this version. Heads up kind of thing. This is where the change was, We commented on our tool commented on the pull request. All the engineers are like, why the hell is it doing this? This is more secure. We want this, we plan for it. That's not the point of it. The point of it is, hey, AppSec folks, or hey, infrastructure folks, did you know this was happening kind of thing? Because if, everybody has a million pull requests, you can't review every single one. Surface up the ones that are risky architecturally wise. And then if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, the door's always open. Happy to help in any way. OWASP has a warm spot in my heart, so I love doing these things. I love helping people out. I was a student in one of those chairs one day, 7, 8 years ago, so that's fun.
Well, thank you, Matt.
No problem. Anthony had a quick question. Any recommended trainings to get developers and architects up to speed on this? We are working on something like that. So hours when we have it. No. I'll have to get back to you. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, we have a bunch of YouTube videos. Every one of these companies, like CodeRabbit is a company that isn't a competitor to us. They focus more on like code quality, but in the same way, like an agent would review it for like bugs and stuff like that on a pull request. They have some pretty good YouTube videos. But when we have ours, I'll send it out. We have this thing called Lean AppSec that we're gonna put. It's typically done like for SCA and SAS, but we're gonna add a section about this kind of stuff too. And we have good blog posts and stuff like that as well. But we can send Jeremy a couple things. That's all I got. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
I don't know, how do we do the raffle?
Yeah, you gotta like put it in one of those what's it called? Like the spinning wheels thing?
Do you remember that?
No, it's just a website. You just go and when our company monthly